So what would be the message, and how do you get people to help understand that if there were less taxes, they could still donate that money? Because I always say, hey, listen, if the levy doesn't pass, all these businesses that are for it, they can still write a check out to the government.
That's right.
Yeah, correct.
Just like what I say about funding Ukraine or any of these other little wars is, if you want to give money to Ukraine, write a check, send it to the embassy for write down for diapers and bombs or whatever you want. You can still do that, and I think.
But why? But they don't.
You know why? Because the people with the idea, they immediately went, okay, the taxpayers will pay for this, rather than it being a private businessman or woman and saying, why don't we have a community, rec center, but let's get the businesses to pay for it, and then going out to each business owner and saying, this is our idea, giving a presentation,
here's
saying,
our business plan.
Here's our business plan. Yeah. We would like you to make a donation, and in return for that, we put your name up on the wall or whatever it is for these different funding levels. It's going to have an athletic field, and you can have the field named after you, or whatever it is. The basketball court can be like this Sheets basketball court or Bob's Ford. I was in marketing a little bit in college in some of my classes. It just makes sense to people want recognition.
Yeah.
And it's the good tax write-off oftentimes. But instead of being a tax write-off, if they didn't have to pay the taxes, they got more money to just, give away. Because the American person, just by their very nature who is successful, wants to give back as a gratitude for the Almighty giving them the opportunity, right, of making such wealth in their lives. But the only burden that keeps them from doing what they really want is government and that taxing. Because government says, that's the difference between a conservative and a liberal, is that liberals believe the government needs to step in and provide that hand. And conservative says, no, let the people support what they want.
And that's why conservatives give more than liberals do.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And you didn't say Republican or Democrat.
No.
Because there's a lot of Republicans in this town that are not conservative. Yeah. And so when I saw our Republican committee promoting more taxes, I looked, I said, is that a Republican committee? They're voting for more? They're wanting more taxes? To me, that's never a Republican thing. It's why George Bush Sr. lost. Remember, no new taxes, and then he raised them, and then the Democrats said, "Hey, no." So to me, it's a conservative concept. It's not a Republican, because now everyone says. Well, you can't.
I don't even think we should say, and we had this discussion before, conservative, Republican or Democrat anymore.
Yeah,
it's not, because they're not. They're both sides of the same coin.
They really are, and I've learned so much about the corruption in this state, in Charleston, and the Republicans, they're worse because, listen, there's always going to be a blue team. We know what they stand for, big government funding. They're not so much as, they're not the swamp. People think, oh yeah, Nancy Pelosi's the swamp. No, the swamp is people like Alex Mooney and these career politicians, Mitch McConnell, that have been there forever. And we're like, why? What are you doing? Like, you keep spending money, and otherwise we would know you as the cheerleader that was always screaming and throwing constitutions across the House chambers about all the spending. But nobody does that anymore. You get once in a while, Rand Paul will get up there and he'll talk about how ridiculous his spending is, but then he doesn't live by his own term limit pledge. And I'm like, listen, you've let the Democrats win, or the liberals, because you don't trust that there will be other good conservatives that will take your place.
Side with you.
And you have a very small handful in the House that's trying the Freedom Caucus, but
even some of them,
yeah.
Because Moody's part of the Freedom Caucus.
Oh, he is.
He is, but see,
how come you never hear his name in that?
Because he hasn't done anything. His nickname, I was told this by somebody. He goes, his nickname in DC is the Squish. Like, he's just there. Like, he doesn't.
My wife calls it.
He's a big guy too, but he's not as big as Justice. Justice, you look at him and how is he gonna? He won't survive 6 years from now. I mean,
I'm surprised he's.
But that's the problem. I've heard stories from people like he'll win and then he'll send Capital Moore in his place. I'm like, how does he get to do that? Well, because he's the governor still, and can still. I would think there would need to be a runoff election or something like that. I have to look at those rules.
I didn't vote for Captain Ward, just for the record.
Just
between us girls.
But it's just because he was living a fun lifestyle and he was kind of a rocker doesn't make him ineligible for office.
It's not why I didn't vote for him, FYI. Because before I got back in the church, I lived a rock star life, so I understand.
Yeah,
I look at his principles and his policies, and I say, I'm not for that.
So let's hit some of your policies. Sure. We already know no taxes.
No taxes.
Yes, we have to fund the government some.
Get rid of the income tax, which is the 16th Amendment.
Would love that.
And switch it to a very small, I like the idea, 3% sales tax on new products only. And then we're going to live off of tariffs and fees. And that is more money than most people can imagine with the 3%, because if you're a multi-billionaire, you're going to start buying new stuff, right? If you're just an ordinary Joe like you and me, you're going to be buying a used Ford 150. We're not paying sales tax on that, but you're buying a new yacht. You are paying.
It's a Honda CRV.
But I'm just using you as a hypothetical example.
Yeah, notice he didn't point to me as the billionaire.
So you're not going to want to put all your money in securities. You're going to want to live it up a little bit because you're like, man, if I don't have property tax too, if we get rid of that, then you're going to want to enjoy your wealth. And that puts people in work because they got to make the stuff that you want to buy.
True.
And so instead of just, think about how many more toys Warren Buffett would buy if he didn't have all these tax. He spends most of his time figuring out how not to
pay taxes. Yeah.
It's a little game,
It's true.
It's terrible.
It's why Trump got picked on when he was running 2016.
Yeah.
Well, you don't pay this. He's like, yeah, but you're the one who wrote the laws for me.
I know the laws because I use it. Yeah. They're like,
I'm doing it illegally. And they're like, what?
Yeah. So lower taxes. What do you think your next hard-hitting thing that you...
So pretty controversial for people in power, but I said, I've learned how little our military makes, right? And it's tough being a conservative and a constitutionalist saying we need a standing army. But the people that graduate boot camp should make the same first-year salary as a U.S. senator or U.S. congressman, which is $144,000, I believe, dollars. Now people are like, "Oh, you can never do that." Guess how much they're making? $23,000.
Yeah. Wow.
You can't start a family. You can't pay bills. You can't buy a car.
So my son is Marine. He retired. We're not retired. Sorry, he did.
Marines never retire. You're always a Marine.
Yeah, but he was always complaining. He's like, we make less than McDonald's workers.
Yeah, I mean, and there are warriors that we train to go kill bad guys in other countries, and we pay them the absolute worst. If we were looking at Roman times, it would be justified morally for the military to overtake our government and just get rid of them. And then find something like a good general and put in power until we could have new elections. I mean, think about it. That's how bad it is, how poor these people are paid. But they're the reason we walk around free without Nazi flags everywhere or Japanese flags. Have you seen that miniseries, Man in a High Castle? That's one.
Yes.
Well, that's what we would have had without these heroes.
Yeah.
And
Amazon series, go watch it.
$20,000. That's terrible.
Oh, it's bad. Plus,
it used to be 18 from what I was told recently.
Plus, so this was a question. Now, this was interesting because this was drilled into their head. If they leave any of their equipment behind, they lose a gun, they lose their helmet, whatever.
Charged for it.
They have to be charged for it. So when we up and left everything in Afghanistan. Were our guys charged for that?
That's right. You left a Humvee and a Black Hawk and all these other stuff. Because I understand it's cheaper, but they're supposed to destroy it on the way out. Like you put all your weapons in your vehicles and you just drop a big bomb on it, like a daisy cutter, and say you can't touch this anymore.
No.
And now
it's just a way of
some
giving
of those
it to our
weapons
enemies.
have gotten to Hamas and are killing Israelis and peaceful Muslims, the ones that are there. And people don't realize how many peaceful Muslims there are. I think 1/4 of the elected officials in Israel are Muslim or Arab.
Gotcha.
They're not Jewish. It's crazy.
A lot of people don't understand that because they're like, Israel is just out to kill everyone.
And like, guys in black hats and long hair. It's like, no.
If you've been in Israel, there's a lot of Muslims in Israel.
Yeah.
I mean, and they coexist peacefully. It's just it's this area that everyone just kind of wants to ignore the conflict that has always been going on.
It's biblical. Now, we shouldn't give free money to Israel because they're a wealthy country.
Oh, yeah.
If they want our money, we should barter. Like, we give them money and they give us stuff. I remember when I was in my teens reading a story that we would give them F-15 fighters to go and make the computer better. And then they would get shipped back to us. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah.
And I still remember that because it's so unique that we would send them military stuff to go and make it better than we could, right? And we pay them for that. So we get stuff back. Now, we shouldn't just give them free money. Now, Ukraine, that is such a quagmire. I don't know how much you guys know and have been told, but that's historical too, because what Russia wants is the port for safety because it's afraid of NATO, because NATO has not kept its promises to Russia.
I was going to say that.
We're the bad guys.
Yes. They were told, if you don't try to expand NATO here, nothing will happen.
Well, Russia wanted to be part of NATO, but guess who told them to go jump off a bridge? Bill Clinton, because he didn't like Putin. So we basically turn our backs on Russia. We were helping them, basically become capitalist, and we were helping them disarm their nukes and all that stuff. But at some point, we kind of just said, no, we're not going to do this anymore.
Well, there's no money in that.
Not anymore, And so, and Putin's like, well, what the heck? You were our friend, and now you're not, and it's all political. And I think he's a pretty cool character, and I'll tell you why. I'm not his biggest fan. But if I was the leader of a country and you killed 500,000 of my soldiers with your money and your bullets, I would be hard-pressed not to nuke you to oblivion. And the fact that he hasn't done that means he's pretty rational, pretty cool character. He understands what's going on, and he's a former KGB Spetsnaz colonel or something like that. He's got it. He's with it. He may not... He's a tyrant a little bit, but he wants good things for his people, right? And we're not helping him.
No. Well... So
he's forced to turn to China, forced to sell military equipment to people that are our enemies. And we're like, well, Russia's the bad guy. I'm like, no, they're not. I mean, even Mitt Romney knew that. It was China. And China is the worst. They are 1,000,000 times worse than the Nazis ever were. I mean, right now, how many millions of people are in concentration camps?
Yeah.
Re-education camps. Well, now.
They're killing Uyghurs like crazy.
Yeah, so if you are a Christian or believe in freedom or a Muslim or a homosexual in that country, you're in a camp. And if they can't re-educate you, then you're just part of a group of people that when a rich person needs an organ, anywhere in that black market, they'll kill you, or they'll just cut you up and take out your liver or whatever and sell it to some African warlord or some Chinese businessman. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
And they're our preferred trading partner, and I don't think we should have any trade with them. We should take... how many acres of land do they own in West Virginia? That's sick. That I keep hearing about all the farmland they're buying up in West Virginia. I'm like, I would just take it and say... we're going to sell this and give all that money to the homeless vets. Thank you for your charity. When you want to have free elections, when you want to get rid of these extermination camps or the concentration camps, treat everybody equally, we'll start to have a regular relationship with you. But other than that, I think
our president can't do that. Our president can't do that. Our president today.
Oh, yeah. Biden, he's taking millions and millions, tens of millions from them.
Yeah. Now, a stronger president that may offend you with the tweet would probably do that.
I don't think he was, because he was buddy with Xi Jinping or whatever how you say his name.
But listen, how much did we get under Trump in tariffs?
A lot.
A lot. So whatever that number is,
yeah,
he was putting tariffs on stuff.
Yeah, and tariffs is how we originally funded the government back before the taxes.
Yeah. And he did say, now, your thoughts on this, because I don't know if he's elected and you're elected, I don't know if he can do this on executive order, but he said the first thing he's going to do is he's going to stop China from putting plants in Mexico, because that's what they're doing now.
They'll put pressure on Mexico. economically. Now, you know what's funny is
Because they're
Mexico
getting
is
them up
a
tier
really
with
wealthy
low tariffs.
country.
Yeah.
People think, oh, all these people coming across illegally, it's because Mexico is such a slum. No, they're really pure capitalists. They don't take care of people who don't want to work. Those people don't want to work. They come here now, and they don't want to come for work there because those people already came. These are people who want to leech off the side, just get free stuff, and there is no border. There's no southern border anymore. Why we're even employing these border patrol agents is just it's laughable. Other than maybe that Texas area. The problem is that the media doesn't really cover that, so you don't know how good of a job they're doing. But I always joked if I was a senator right now, I'd have every gun over and, good old boy from West Virginia down there helping build trenches and put up fence and all that other stuff right now until it was done, because it really is a national security issue. Like, if you don't keep your castle secure, you have nothing.
Yeah, it's true.
And I can only imagine the damage. If we don't deport those people, our system will run dry. We're already bankrupt as a country. I mean, people have told me, like, there's no money. If I were to go out and pass a bill for $100 million to give to something tomorrow in D.C., that's IOU debt to China or another country. Mm-hmm. There's no money. There's no bank account for the U.S. anymore. We're that broke. But people don't. Because it's all illusion, because we don't have that gold standard anymore.
Correct.
And I always say 9 out of $10 or 95 cents on a dollar of government spending is either unconstitutional or should be left up to the states, charities, churches, or private sector. And I think if we went back to that, government would be a lot smaller. We'd be able to get rid of a lot of the departments.
They just started putting their hands in so many things. And I think that is the issue here with our school system. The schools are government ran. I mean, they are. And the government does not do a good job at anything they run.
They can't.
Look
it's
at
not
the
in the
post office.
Yeah, and that's in the Constitution that we need a post office. And
but they're not good at what they do.
I was talking about that recently. Remember when they wanted to tax emails?
Yes.
That's been 20 years
ago. I'm sure, whoever's on the left listening, don't get that idea again, because it'll probably pass.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I'm shocked they don't do texts and stuff like that, because...
Yeah, but the question is, when you have FedEx and UPS and all these...
successful.
And
should we even deliver anything with the mail, with USPS, other than letters? Maybe not. Even if it runs a deficit, it's still in the Constitution. Unless we want to take it out, should packages be left up to the private industry?
I think they should. The private
There's got to be an answer.
Better.
I was supposed to work for the Postal Service out of college. I aced their test that they came out. They changed their test for postal workers. Aced it, and then I was like, man, they got to work 6 days a week. Now I work like 7 to 10 days a week sometimes when I'm in busy season. But that was the reason I decided not to. And they wanted me to go work in their business development over in Maryfield, Virginia. And I was like, I'm going to have no life if I work 6 days a week, 9 to 5. And what was really cool is that my great-grandfather survived the Depression, fed his family because he worked for the Postal Service during those times, which the government, they created that when they built the system that had to do with the stock exchange, and then they just made it worse and worse and worse. And, that's just, government does those things well. Like, they take our money or they kill us, or they kill the bad guys. It's just crazy. Because that's what government's for, to take and enslave. And, most of what we live every day, our interaction with other Americans, is not government controlled. We choose to live free because we live by the golden rule. You're not taking your neighbor's property here. Mm-hmm. So it's a silent agreement to live a certain way in this country. Criminals don't really follow that, and government, I would throw in the lot with criminals. They only get in the way, and they basically start taking away our freedoms. Like, let's take, for example, like the Hope Scholarship. Parents really always had that freedom to homeschool their kids, and the freedom not to be taxed upon the stuff they bought and their revenue. But now the government comes back and says, well, we'll grant you back freedom. But we really had that to begin with. And that's the problem with government philosophy today is whatever they're doing that is good, if you look at it, it's really not good because they're saying you didn't have the freedom to begin with. We give it back to you. We give it to you to begin with. And that's really scary.
Yeah, give me something I already had.
Yeah. And it's just because I didn't have it written down in some law doesn't mean it wasn't part of freedom already. And that's what really gets me is like, I have the freedom. I should have the freedom to just do whatever I want within the rule of law and not have the government take from me.
Correct.
Or tell me that I can't run a farm in my backyard or drink raw milk or that kind of stuff.
So let's talk about some solutions then.
Sure.
Real quick. So I'm all about solution. I'm a business guy. Let's fix this. What do we do? So here's my first question.
Yeah.
Let's say that it's not going to happen today or tomorrow, but let's say that let's just talk about the schools. You're like, Justin, shut up about that. Anyway, let's talk about
this is a great example.
So let's say the levy doesn't pass.
Yeah.
And they already said if it doesn't pass in May, they're going to do it again in November.
Don't you love that? It's like, if first we don't succeed stealing,
try again. Oh,
yeah.
steal again.
Oh, they're going to try. So here's my question, and I'm interrupting you intentionally.
Good.
I want to find out, because they're saying if you don't vote for it, you don't appreciate the kids. You don't love the kids.
That's crazy.
I mean, they've been, which I think is kind of sad. That's the Hillary Clinton deplorable
It
thing
is.
to me.
It is.
And I said that's so great that they're calling you that. But so what does the school do when they need to raise money for things? How do they do it? Now, in Hardy County, I'm the pastor of a church.
Yeah.
I live on, our church is a 501(c)(3). I live on the church property. The house, there's no property tax, right? So we, thanks. Don't tell our listeners that.
I know. It's
They'll
like,
say,
oh my gosh.
this doesn't affect you.
They're going to start taxing us on that too.
Yeah, eventually. But as an individual, I give $40,000 to $50,000 a year to civic things.
Yeah.
We give some to the schools so we give, and I'm a firm believer in that, to give back. And if I had to pay less taxes and I got tax money back, I'd probably give that as well. So how do you help the school if the levy doesn't pass and if they try to do it again in November? What do they do to try to help fund some things that they're wanting to do?
So here's a great idea.
What's the right way?
I would say if it doesn't pass, you get together with some people and create a local community, like a county committee that goes and audits, gets a private outside the state audit of the school system now. See where we can cut funding or wasteful funding. Sometimes it's double funded or whatever, and they don't even know it. See what we can save, and then come up with a private sector solution. Say, okay, get a list of 30 to 50 businesses where you can go and say, okay, we found half the amount in wasteful spending. This is our unfunded desire for this community project. Go out to this private sector businesses and wealthy folks and say, let's get this done outside of government, so there's more accountability on the money, and we'll have it as a community center, but it'll be through this group of people that gets together as a kind of a committee, and take it out of the hands of the school levy. And you have to do it quickly, because if you're going to have a revote in November, but have an awesome plan where you can keep going back and then push it in the media and then the school board, like, hey, we already got a plan that's much better than yours. You have to figure, this is the art of war. Praise them for their idea, but just let them know it can be done better by people on the outside, right? We need the outside audit because the state is so busy with all its other audits, it's not able to give the time necessary.
So tell me more about, if the treasurer listens to everything we do, and he comments on it while he's working. So my question is, and maybe he can tell us, I know they were audited, and I don't know if they're audited by the state. I don't know, and we can ask him that.
I think it was audited by the state.
We're making an assumption now.
Yeah.
So you're saying a third party company to come in and do an audit on what specifically? Wasteful spending or double? Like
all spending. All spending in the education sector of the county.
Okay.
So figure out how much money can be saved.
And there's companies that do this for a living.
Oh yeah, there are. You just got to find them.
Okay.
Find a great You got to go out and do a little research in the beginning and find one that did a great job in another state
Okay.
or another county that's got the record and reputable, and then have them come in, do the audit, compare it to the audit that was done by the state,
Yeah.
and then, okay.
Well, the state doesn't do a wasteful spending audit. They make sure that you did things properly, like you spent the money properly.
Yeah.
They in other words, the $48,000 that the superintendent paid teachers passed it because they didn't spend it. They didn't spend it illegally. It just wasn't
That's right.
a wise way to do it.
But you made the perfect statement. You said spent rather than should be spent.
Yeah, correct.
We need somebody to come in and say, should this money be spent?
Correct.
I've gotten more and more detail-minded when it comes to what the kids learn. Some of these extracurricular activities, they need to pay for.
Okay.
I'll let your community and your county have that debate on which classes are paid for out of our dollars, or which should be maybe after school or club, where you have to pay into.
And that would be part of the athletic. What's the athletic boosters? How are they involved with that?
The athletic boosters, basically, they fundraise for all the athletics. So
But what does that mean, all the athletics? Like uniforms?
yeah, so basically when they get uniforms, it's the athletic boosters that are out there doing the fundraising for it. On this building, the shell, it's only a shell that's $400,000
in electric.
and electric.
We're not
The
just talking about
athletic-
sports. I'm
but-
talking
well,
about some of the other
But
classes.
the athletic boosters have to fundraise for everything to go in it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So what do you mean by other things besides athletic?
Well, I don't want to say arts and music because I value this. It's gone from STEM to STEAM. If I could create the education day for a student, completely over, I'd have them in the classroom setting half the day. The other half of the day would either be in athletics or doing other things like working in auto shop or having business owners come in and give talks and working on them with accounting. If you wanted to study accounting, have the pizza owner come in and work on their books and have those kids learn what the accounting that business is. It is not good for anybody to sit in a desk for 8 hours and just listen droning on, because I look back at my own experiences and I hated it. I would just space out like crazy. And looking back in my town, most of the young men, they know how to change an engine. Well, they should be in shop class half the day. Where if they're a football player, they should be in the gym. They should be running. They should be learning nutrition. And they shouldn't be taking home 11 hours or any homework. They should learn what they need to in the class and then go home and be able to be a kid or help with the family. Now you're going home from some of these schools, you get 8 hours of homework a night, and you're like, what the heck?
And then you have parents who are working all day and extra long hours, and how do they help
If you're
out?
lucky enough to have two parents in the state, and if you're a kid, you might be the first or the second parent, or both, because your parent might be working double shift just to pay for the 2 or 3 kids because of the taxes. So, again, when you go home, you really need to look at education as preparing them to compete against Japanese, Chinese, German kids.
Exactly.
And they don't go home. Those Japanese kids don't go home with hours of homework. You know what they do when they're in kindergarten? They learn to change their beds and clean. And once a week, I think it was on Fridays, from when I read the article, they clean the classroom, top to bottom, and it's spotless. So they give these kids real world experiences.
That would just be cruel and unusual punishment.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I mean, for example, every kid to graduate should. Maybe you give them a basic. You get the local bank to give them a $50. If they match it for $50, give them their own account, give them their credit card, and work on them on how to credit. Knowledge so that they don't get in major debt. Just working with local businesses. I always like this idea of apprenticeship. So if you want to work on autos during the summer or during part of the year, you go and you work with the local car repair place as part of you provide them with work.
I'm assuming that there might be still something.
Well, you're thinking about
kind
through
of like
Votech
that.
Is what you're thinking.
No. maybe was it when I was in school? I thought you could have at the end of the day you were, or who was it, or was it one of the kids that you got to go and work at a business?
Well,
it's the end of the day, so it's outside.
Yeah,
and it's more of, I mean, let these kids be kids a little bit, but keep them busy so they don't get into the drugs and the alcohol. And I've started seeing some of these signs in some of these counties. Hey, it's a good idea to wait to have kids until you're,
there's one
and I like that because it's not pushing it from a religious point of view. It's just like, hey, do you want to?
Statistics show this.
Yeah, you want to be wealthy. You want to be well off enough that you're happy, and these are just good decisions, right?
The biblical principles are good.
They are. I mean, look at the old Jewish laws. It was like, don't. The most famous one I always think is, you've got to kill your animal when it's healthy. Don't pick off something off the side of the road because it's probably disease infected.
Gotcha. Yeah.
That's and God really was teaching those people
He had health laws.
Yeah.
In the Bible, so yeah, absolutely.
But then a lot of these people, they didn't know to wash their hands before they did stuff,
Well, our doctors are still trying to learn that.
They are.
Still, believe it or not, that's still something, because I was in the business selling materials for hospitals.
Yeah.
That's still the number one issue they have is infections.
Yeah.
And so, I'm not picking on doctors, but they said a lot of doctors forget to wash their hands.
Well, that's what we did. 5 or 6 of our children's births were at home.
Okay. Gotcha.
Because that's much better for the mom and for the kids, and you're not around. You're not getting MRSA and all this other crazy stuff at the hospital. You're like, huh. So, but just education, we have to re-examine and kind of, rethink. And this is not a social experiment. We have to get these kids ready for economic success.
Yeah.
We got to get the liberal mentality of, instead of these kids graduating trying to figure out whether they're a boy or girl, some of these kids need to be graduating and think, do I want to design the crops that Elon Musk is going to put on Mars? Mm-hmm. But most of these poor counties, they're graduating with a GED or not graduating. They're like, I'm stuck working part-time at the local gas station. Yeah. And that's really sad. And, this is the result of government. This state is a failed government experiment on overtaxation and over regulation on the coal and the steel and those kind of businesses where they drove them out. Because when I was up in the North Neck, people who worked forever in the coal and steel mills, they would say, hey, I did this for a career, and I'll tell you what killed my industry was these 30% revenue taxes on these businesses for green energy. Mm-hmm. And I said to him, I said, we both know none of that 30% ever went to a green energy fund. It went into the pockets of local rich folk. And, I have nothing against people with wealth, but do good with it. Mm-hmm. You are allowed, if you make good money or you were given it to you, you win the lottery or something like that, there's nothing wrong with living well. But don't be spoiled, and then don't misuse it. Don't steal to get wealthy. And that's what a lot of these politicians do, is they go to this exclusive country club lifestyle, and they lose connection with us. And I can tell you that my grocery bill has tripled since COVID. Since Biden became president.
2020.
Yeah. And it's crazy. My salary hasn't gone up.
Well, we went through an episode and talked about the cost of the increased costs.
Yeah. And
we went through gas, we went through bread, we went through milk, and we went through a lot of categories. And it's, the challenge we have is a lot of people who don't have a voice reach out to us privately and say,
well, they are afraid of being ostracized.
That's true.
And
they don't
getting
want their personal
commented on
taxes
Facebook
put
and stuff
online
like that.
by the treasurer of the school.
But the whole fact is, there's more people in this area that are struggling than there are people that aren't.
Yeah.
And it's easy when you're a superintendent and you make over 6 figures.
Well, speaking of that, let me stop you for a second. Your mom told me that the administrators in this county actually got to choose their own salaries.
Sort of. So teachers, and this is by the state.
The teachers were required by the state, but some of these administrators.
So the Board of Education can give them a raise.
Okay.
So the issue is,
If I'm the superintendent, I want every board member to be my BFF.
To be my BFF, which we have.
And which they've done.
Yes. So it makes it very easy. And I'm not, and I'm like you. I'm not against wealth.
Yeah.
But it's very easy to say I don't mind paying taxes when I'm making well over six figures.
Yeah.
But you're looking at. I need to look up. One of the senior citizens texted us and said, I'd love to know how many senior citizens live in this area and are on just Social Security. So when you're just on Social Security, that makes it difficult.
Yeah, that's crazy. Let me tell you this story. I was down in Hinton at a seniors center, and we had a bunch of candidates there, and one of the seniors during Q&A brought up the question of Social Security tax from West Virginia. And one of the politicians, I didn't know who it was, but was sitting behind me, and you knew it was a career pro, say, well, we're phasing this out. And there are just times where I go off. Like, you ever seen that picture of Jesus throwing tables?
Yeah.
and going out the whip? Well, that's the kind of person I am. And when you set me off, I'll be professional. And I said to this lady, I said, I know I'm running for federal office, but these people don't care about you. Because if they really did, they'd get together tomorrow in Charleston and get rid of those taxes. And I started pointing to the politicians and said, they don't really care. Otherwise, they were the fact that you have to pay these taxes to begin with.
Yeah.
Another great story is I was at the farm, Berkeley County Farmers Bureau Meet the Candidate Night. There were 36 other candidates. And every one of those guys and gals got up in there and talked about all the things they did for us, which means you've been spending our money. Yeah. And I said to the farmers, I said, my goodness, folks, I've listened to the taxes that you have to pay on your equipment, your property, your income, inheritance. And I said, I am ashamed to sit here as an American that you pay and know that you pay any of those taxes. Your job feeding us and the world is so important.
Very important.
You should have no taxes. And when you go to buy a brand new John Deere or Ford tractor, it should be a 0% loan for you, where you pay that back. But instead it's the opposite. And, where I live, all this farmland keeps getting gobbled up by these Dan Ryan homes. And it's just, you want to throw up. It's so sad. And there's a place right down the road, and my wife, we saw the signs like, this is so sad. And I was like, I wish I had money because I just buy that farm. I find farmers to just work it, say, hey, look, I want $1 worth of equity in it. You guys go work it because we need
so many farmers here. I mean, in this area.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of farmers.
But if you go and you were to do a podcast with them and ask them what's their biggest threat, it isn't drought, it isn't blight, it's the government turn around and telling them what they can and cannot crop, and it's just crazy.
Yeah. So my one of my friends has a dairy farm.
Yeah.
And he told me, you'd be surprised. The government will just come in and say, you got to dump all that milk out. And I'm like, what? Is it bad? No. We're making too much.
Yep.
And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. They can do that? He says, yeah, we can't do anything.
And because you don't have the 9 o'clock or the 5 o'clock news there, what they tell you is every time I go to a gun shop or a pawn shop that sells weapons, they say, I get a call every week, every month from the ATF basically threatening, or when they come in the door, they're like, my job today is to close you down. And I'm like, this is America. That's our that's our right to basically protect ourselves from tyranny. And the fact that anybody even applies for the ATF, I would get rid of the ATF, get us out of the United Nations. The IRS should be, you know what the IRS would be really good at? Helping deport illegals, because it could go to these businesses and find out if they're illegal immigrants that are working for that company. Now, your mom told me an example about, I guess it was, I don't know if it's Haitians, but over at the chicken place.
Yeah, we work with a lot of them.
People in this community don't want to work there. They're good jobs, and they're bringing in these people legally from other countries.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's crazy that you can get a good job. But COVID really broke the backbone of workers.
So people got paid to stay at home.
That's right.
Yeah, so
they stayed at home. And then when the money went away, they're like, I'm just gonna say no.
That's
So
right.
I had someone say that they're like, oh, all these people that they're bringing in, they shouldn't be allowed. And I said, go work at Pilgrim
Yeah,
Center.
you go get the job.
Yeah. You know, go work there and it'll stop it. They're starting out at $20 an hour.
Yeah,
That's pretty good.
They're good paying. It's like 19, but they're good paying jobs.
Oh, I think night shift might be the 20.
Well,
there's
different, but they're good paying jobs.
But that's, I mean,
Comparatively.
yeah.
It would be higher if they didn't have to pay so much taxes.
Well, obviously.
You know, that 20 might be 35.
Yeah.
Honestly, if we had a fair system.
Or that 20 would really be 20.
It would be.
Yeah.
I mean, every $20, I give all my money that I have to my wife, but I don't use cash anymore. But I see a $20 bill, I'm like, that's a lot of money. You know?
True.
But the thing is, by the time you've paid taxes on it, it really was $40, and you only have the 20 left.
Yeah, and it's just so wrong because, again, this is America. We can figure out a way to fund government because we do things better, right? With that,
Correct.
With that atmosphere, that freedom, that creativity. You know, why do we have to pay taxes? We can find a way to fund government some other way.
But it's like you were talking off air, the waste, and that's what we were going all through the finances for the school was. It's the waste. It's like when they were like, okay, we're gonna put shrimp on a treadmill and see what happens. It is going to cost us $1.5 million,
right.
And the government writes out a check.
And that program will never go away and usually get more money because they said some benefit came out of that. But I'll tell you who might benefit from that: private business.
Yeah,
that's doing research on interbreeding certain, prawn and shrimp varieties to make them, fatter or whatever.
Yeah.
But as a private sector, as a American, that you should be taking out of my paycheck to go fund that.
Correct. The business that benefits from it should pay for it.
That's right.
And don't even get us started on the money that was given for the COVID vaccine.
Oh yeah, that's just
the complete transfer of wealth.
Yes, and so the biggest solution at the federal level for all these problems is term limits and getting rid of some of these three-letter agencies like the EPA. What does the federal government have any right telling us in West Virginia what we can and cannot do? West Virginia is supposed to be its own country, part of a collection of countries that make up these United States. But we don't think of that anymore. And hats off for Morrissey for fighting back. But somebody said on the radio that I heard, he should just say, screw the EPA. We're just not going to listen.
Yeah.
That's why you need a strong governor.
The health department started shutting stuff down. And
So I think it's Texas. I might be wrong in the state that's going through this now. I believe it is Texas.
Maybe.
With the silencer. They're telling the firearm what is tobacco
ATF.
ATF. Thank you. I just went blank.
Isn't that funny? Alcohol, tobacco, and firearms are all legal.
Yeah,
and they have the
so they're not they're trying to not allow them to use silencers, and they're like, if they're bought in this state and they live in this state, you can't tell them what to do.
Yeah.
So they're fighting this now in the Supreme Court, saying that you have no jurisdiction to tell with something that is built here, owned here.
Yeah. I would argue the Supreme Court doesn't even have jurisdiction over the states.
They shouldn't.
They should not.
I agree.
The Supreme Court really only has jurisdiction over what the House of Representatives gives it.
Yeah.
But that's in the Constitution, but most people don't even know that.
Yeah.
So now the Supreme Court is like end all be all with everything. Yeah. And I'm like, no, that's not the way it's supposed to be, but it's become that.